For if one should put together and reckon up all the buildings and all the great works produced by the Hellenes, they would prove to be inferior in labor and expense to this labyrinth. The pyramids were also greater than words can say, and each of them is equal to many works of the Hellenes, great as they may be, but the labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids. In Egypt, there lies the remains of a once enormous and monumental temple, which was written about in several accounts from ancient figures such as the chronicler and father of history Herodotus, the Roman emperor Septimus Severus, and the geographer and philosopher Strabo. The complex was marveled over for thousands of years until its destruction. Outside of these records, only scant pieces remain, shrouding in mystery one of Egypt's most famed structures. Amenemhet's temple, also famously known as the Labyrinth of Egypt, was a structure built by Amenemhet III and is located in the modern-day Faiyum Governorate between the Nile River and the Karun Lake. Amenemhet III was the 6th king of the 12th dynasty of ancient Egypt. He ruled from approximately 1842 to 1797 BCE and is known to have ordered the construction of pyramids and structures during his reign, the Labyrinth of Egypt being one of them. The Labyrinth of Egypt is described by Greek geographer Strabo as serving multiple functions, such as being the site to conduct sacrifices and make offerings to the gods, and as a place to administer justice. The labyrinth was built alongside the pyramid of Amenemhet III and was estimated to be roughly 300,000 square feet, or 28,000 square meters. For reference, that's the equivalent of approximately 1,000 American football fields. The walls of the labyrinth were made of mud brick, and the other structures in the labyrinth, such as colonnades and architraves, were made of several materials such as white limestone, red granite, and brown sandstone. An architrave, by the way, is the part of the structure that is usually found above the columns but below the frieze. Here's a picture of a diagram to better demonstrate what it is. To give you guys an example of how the labyrinth may have been laid out, here's an excerpt from The Pyramids by Miroslav Werner, a Czech Egyptologist. The original plan of the labyrinth cannot be precisely reconstructed. Probably the inner part with the sacrifice hall was in the back part of the temple, and thus near the south side of the pyramid. In front of it was the complex of columned halls, columned courtyards, porticos, colonnades, chambers, and passageways. To the south lay another extensive open courtyard. According to Strabo, there were as many halls as there were provinces in Egypt, that is, 42. In the halls were supposed to have been honored the divinities of these provinces. Aside from the structure's enormous area, it is worth mentioning that when Herodotus and the other ancient sources describe the structure as a labyrinth, they're not necessarily meaning that it was maze-like, but more that it was expansive and complex. Herodotus wrote, "From courtyards into rooms, rooms into galleries, galleries into more rooms, thence into more courtyards." Unfortunately, through time and human tampering, the labyrinth was destroyed and its remnants degraded. In excavations conducted by Inge, Uytterhoeven, and Ingrid Blom, ceramics from the late Ptolemaic period and the early Roman period were found in the labyrinth site. Outside from the actual labyrinth area, northwest of the pyramid, they also described that stone materials such as column and architrave fragments similar to those in the labyrinth area were found. Of the remains, a large architrave block was found bearing an inscription with Cleopatra's name. The inscription gave the year 193 or 194 BCE for the Ptolemaic building activities at Hawara. Thus, the architrave found possibly is referring to a reconstruction or repair phase of the labyrinth. Inge Uytterhoeven and Ingrid Blom wrote as well that the architrave could possibly have been from a new monumental construction north of the pyramid, which was not preserved. Thus, it is possible that portions of the labyrinth were built over the original structure, or that sections of the labyrinth were repaired during antiquity. I had some difficulty finding specific dates and information after the antiquity period, but it appears that sometime after the fall of the Roman Empire, the remaining structure of the labyrinth was quarried for its stone. To make matters worse, hundreds of years later, after the temple was quarried, a canal was constructed sometime before the mid-13th century right through the labyrinth area, and a later canal was built over the medieval one in the early 1900s. The construction of the canal would have entailed the removal of mud brick, compacted stone debris, and a significant amount of limestone bedrock, further removing what scant artifacts and structure remained from the original site. Despite the destruction the temple has thus far endured, there still may be more to the complex to salvage and preserve. Remember in Herodotus' quote in the beginning of the video, he continued to write, "There are in it two kinds of chambers, the one kind below the ground and the other upon these." Well, in 2008, a group of archaeologists performed a geo-archaeological survey of the site and gathered evidence that the subterranean level of the labyrinth might still be intact. The Mataha expedition, conducted by the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, Ghent University, and Louis du Cordier, with the support and cooperation of Egypt's then Supreme Council of Antiquities, performed a series of scans, discovering that there are features underground which appear to be prominent vertical walls, and that these walls have an average thickness of several meters, and that they are connected in such a way as to resemble many closed rooms. The team states that at the depth of 8 to 12 meters, a massive grid structure likely made out of granite stone was found. It is also worth mentioning that the canals constructed through the labyrinth site have introduced a layer of high salinity subsurface water, which affected the accuracy of the surveys. Thus, while encouraging, the results of the scans should be taken with a pinch of salt. However, if any portions of the underground temple complex survived, then the salty water does risk eroding the remaining stone. Thus, it's paramount that this water be pumped out to preserve what artifacts and structure might remain. Despite these findings, very little preservation work or follow-up expeditions have since occurred. In an interview hosted by LeonardoMarchesi with Louis du Cordier, it was mentioned that there was a follow-up expedition conducted in 2009, but that it was abruptly stopped for unknown reasons. After some time, Louis du Cordier spent 2 years, from 2015 to 2017, drafting and compiling a new plan for the expedition. But a couple of months after the submission of the plans, the file sent to the Ministry of Antiquities disappeared. Another attempt to get the project off the ground was made by Professor Geoffrey Tassie from University College London. Tassie was an experienced Egypt archaeologist and field director, and according to Louis du Cordier, had expressed that he could get the project back on track. However, 3 days after Tassie had contacted Louis du Cordier, he was found dead in a taxi in Cairo, which subsequently killed the project as well. In spite of all of the setbacks and the mysterious death of Tassie, Louis du Cordier is still trying to raise awareness and build momentum to renew another survey and expedition by, in part, speaking to LeonardoMarchesi about his experience, creating NFTs of different Egyptian amulets, and creating the Costco Foundation. The Labyrinth of Egypt, once a monumental structure marveled over for thousands of years by famous ancient figures, is now nearly erased as a consequence of the degradation through centuries of overlapping development and stone quarrying. Parts of Egypt's and human history have been lost, and even when evidence emerges to suggest that pieces of it can be preserved, either through bad luck or intention, efforts to save the labyrinth are thwarted. The clock is ticking before all of the remaining structure of the temple and its history are eventually eroded and lost to time.